And we are live. So I have made some changes here in the view. It's not awesome, but it should work better than usual. Uh, we are again in another show of unlimited intelligence with my good friend and excellent former CIA analyst, Larry Johnson, that has the site Sonar 21. How are you doing, Larry?
Todo bem, todo bem.
Tudo bem, tudo ótimo. I have a very, very important question for you today. Extremely important. How
Okay.
expensive are the eggs in the United States now?
They're actually the price is coming down. Um, so I got the other day bought 18 eggs, a dozen and a half
Mhm.
for about $7.50.
Not so bad.
Yeah,
Not so
I
bad.
mean, in some areas of the country they were experiencing like $14, but
Jesus.
here in Florida we've got lots of people with chickens and selling eggs. They didn't kill all their chickens because of fear of bird flu.
Yeah.
So it's not the prices are definitely coming down. So Trump's getting a nice boost from that.
Yeah. You know why? Because he's buying eggs from Brazil. And
Oh, okay.
we are buying your inflation now.
I mean, Trump hasn't put tariffs on Brazil yet.
I don't know, at least not on yet
I'll send.
on
I need
eggs.
to send a memo to the White House saying, "Hey, you overlooked something. You hit those guys,
Hit those damn Chiquitos Morenos.
Chiquitos Morenos." Yeah.
No, this is an important question actually because just yesterday I had a video about the situation of the eggs that became kind of wow, the eggs are so expensive in Brazil. And about the same time I watched this at the first time, there was a Truth Social from Trump saying that well, eggs are coming down the price, and I said, oh, there's something there. And indeed, just yesterday came out some news in Brazil that, oh, why the United States are buying Brazilian eggs? Well, because United States eggs are expensive, and now they're buying the cheap ones, and now our eggs are expensive. Uh-oh. I think somehow you're frozen. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. There's an interference. I think it get cleared up here.
Yeah, now
No,
it's
no.
okay.
Look,
Now,
this is a man-made problem. Biden had all the chickens killed. Kill all the chickens that lay eggs. You're going to get not enough eggs, and existing demand is going to drive the price up. That's classical economic theory.
not so hard when you know math, at least
So,
some.
but now the chicken supply is going back up. Chickens have hatched. They're starting to lay eggs, and now they're going to probably do the prices will drop. Maybe it'll drop so fast that people lose money because they invested money in trying to buy chickens.
That's one trying to fix one hole and creating another one.
Yeah,
It looks like the U.S. policies is in
creating
tatters.
a creating inadvertently creating a problem.
Exactly, Larry. I had some notes today because this week we had some interesting things going on, and you already spoke about those things in your videos in the Judge. And I always try to watch those before so I can not ask the same, not be just an echo chamber. But some things really called my attentions. Well, first of all, the eggs, of course. Uh, but your analysis on the JFK documents. Let's start by that. Your analysis on the JFK documents brought out some very interesting things.
Yeah,
Uh, because we had a show this week, me and another friends, uh, and we tried to analyze things. There's interesting things for Brazilian because there was some. I don't know if you read everything, but there was some documents concerning the one of Brazilian former politics, is already dead, which is Leonel Brizola, who was one of the person that wanted to, basically go to civil war against the military coup that we had. Well, it was a political coup, but by the military, so we call it military coup. He actually wanted to go to civil war. He wants to raise in arms, and there was some documents saying that he got some. He was offered weapons from China, from Cuba, and he refused it. But those were a bit strange. I don't know if you took a grasp on that. This is not the focus. I would ask more about the JFK assassination, but if you had at least took a look on those and you have some opinions about that.
Well, I think the biggest revelations so far that have come out of the documents, number one, establishing, before it was assumed or believed widely that the CIA had been monitoring Lee Harvey Oswald and were trying to cover up their knowledge that they'd been, to blame them that they had a lot of knowledge about Lee Harvey Oswald because they were surveilling him and they didn't act on it. Well, that turned out not to be true. It was worse than that. That when Lee Harvey Oswald was a Marine in Japan, assigned to at Sugi Air Base, which was a joint military CIA site for launching U-2 airplanes, surveillance aircraft over Japan, that Oswald was there working with some CIA personnel. I believe that's where he was first spotted, identified as a potential for, for a top secret U.S. program called Operation Red Cap. The recruitment took place in Japan, or they waited to return to the United States. But sometime in 1959, early 1959, late 1958, Oswald was recruited by the CIA to leave the military and then to travel to the Soviet Union to get a tourist visa and to enter the Soviet Union and basically see if he could be used as bait to attract either interest from the military intelligence, the GRU, or the Foreign Intelligence Service, the KGB. And that's exactly what he did. He got a visa. He wound up going to actually Minsk, which is now Belarus. But he then went into Moscow to the U.S. Embassy to renounce his citizenship. So we now know that the guy running that program was James Jesus Angleton. And Angleton also, we learned from the documents, was circumventing, betraying President Kennedy. President Kennedy became alarmed with evidence that Israel was trying to build a nuclear weapon. And to that end, Kennedy was trying to investigate it and trying to stop it. Turns out that Angleton was going behind Kennedy's back and working hand in glove with Mossad, and in doing so to provide Israel with a nuclear weapon. When Angleton died, Israel named a forest, small grove of trees after Angleton. They held a memorial service and a plaque. So the subsequent actions by the Israelis confirm what is in fact now in these documents. So why is this all relevant? Book Final Judgment by Michael Collins Piper, 25 years ago, presented very, very strong evidence that it was Mossad, the Israelis, through former Prime Minister Ben Gurion, that ordered the assassination of Kennedy, that they worked closely with the CIA through James Jesus Angleton, and with the mafia, Carlos Marcello in New Orleans, and his sort of capo de capo was none other than Meyer Lansky. So it wasn't just Italian; it was a combination Jewish, Italian, and that's why Jack Ruby was sent to shoot and kill Oswald the day after the assassination in order to shut him up. So these documents come out and help confirm that story, that is in fact true. And so the story we've always been told all along, that the assassination was by a crazed lone gunman, that Oswald was a whack job. Now, when Oswald came back from Russia in 1962, so he was over there for about 3 years. When he arrived in the United States, they didn't arrest his ass. In fact, they allowed him in. He had renounced his citizenship, yet they let him in. And, so he got the treatment that you would when you were actually working as a CIA asset. And the CIA continued to use him. They kept trying to see if they could, paint him as a pro-Castro, pro-Rush, pro-Soviet radical. And that's why he moved to New Orleans and was working on this fair play for Cuba, passing as if he is a big supporter of Cuba. He made another trip to Mexico City to try to get another visa to the Soviet Union. But by that time, I think the Soviets were on to him. I don't know exactly how he was used on the morning of November 22nd in the plot to kill Kennedy. He did not fire the fatal shot, as has been claimed. Somebody else did, the one that hit Kennedy in the head. But Oswald knew, the guy that they came to quickly understand, he was being set up. And in fact, that night, after he was arrested on the 22nd, that night in jail, he got to make a call. And he placed a phone call to a fellow in North Carolina who tried to, John D. Hurt, who was a former naval intelligence officer. And it turns out had been designated to be a handler, sort of a cutout between the CIA and Lee Harvey Oswald, so that is not to have a direct pathway to the CIA. And so all of this adds up that John F. Kennedy was murdered in part because of his policies towards Israel, and in part because of the CIA fears that he was going to continue to disrupt covert activities that were serving the interests of pretty wealthy corporations, and CIA personnel were profiting off of that.
One thing that I found, a couple of things that I found very interesting. I was reading your analysis on sonar21.com, and you post the picture of the autopsy of Kennedy.
Yeah, the autopsy photo of the headshot.
Exactly. One thing that caught my attention on that photo is that, you can clearly see the outside, the outing hole on his right lobe.
The exit.
The exit, exactly.
Yeah,
The exit hole. It's clear, but they do not post the entry hole.
Well, you can actually, that photo, you can sort of see the entry. It's right in the back. You can actually see the area. Because again, the entrance wound is not going to be big.
It's usually very small, yeah.
The bullet penetrates, but then we don't know what kind of bullet was used. What type of ammunition. So the specific, if that was a frangible bullet, a frangible sort of breaks up on impact. But you can, as I said, you can see it looks like just somebody cut off the portion of his temple and just opened it up like a door. That's not the sign you'd see if the shot had come from the front. That all would have been compressed in. So, and the back of his head would have exploded, and it didn't. And yet there's still people to this day. Oh yeah, the back of the doctors manipulated the autopsy photo, and the back of his head was destroyed. Except we got the Zapruder film, which I put in there, a very slow motion, sort of frame by frame. The explosion's up here in the front right, in front of the ear, not behind the ear. There's a lot of the combination of CIA and Israeli Mossad embarked on a massive disinformation campaign afterwards, so that nobody would actually look to find the real truth about what had happened. Kennedy was murdered, and it was a plot that involved elements of the CIA, particularly James Jesus Angleton. But there were others, Lyndon Baines Johnson probably knew of it or soon became aware of it, and they did everything in their power to make sure that the truth never came out.
Well, the second thing that is puzzling me is the timing, because last year, I think it was last year or the previous year, I kind of getting lost on time. Last year, there was some leakage of disclosure documents from the CIA from the murder of JFK during Biden administration, and it was kind of at that moment kind of looked a lot like, oh yeah, they're just pushing Lee Oswald to be a Russian agent or stuff like that,
Right,
because it fit. I think we actually spoke about this here. This time sounds different because it looks like there is a Mossad involvement on that, and Israeli involvement on that. And what really called my attention was the nuclear program of Israel. Do you think, I don't want to make this question too directive, but do you think that this could be a way to say, hey, you know what, Israel do have nukes? We cannot confirm, of course, but hey, look, we have some proof that we had shared nuclear intelligence with them, and we have sent some plutonium and stuff like that. So, do the math. We are not saying, but do the math.
Yeah, I'm not sure I follow you, because the evidence has been out there that Israel has a nuclear weapon.
Okay.
Ryan Dawson made a movie 2 years ago called NUMEC, NUMEC, that lays out in detail how Mossad, using Jewish Americans who had ties to organized crime, stole enriched uranium from a reactor in Pennsylvania and took it to Israel. And that was one of the issues. Kennedy was actually trying to prevent the proliferation of nukes, particularly by Israel, and was moving to sanction what was then the Zionist Organization of America, later became AIPAC, as a foreign, to require them to register as a foreign agent, which they fought and ultimately didn't have to register, because Lyndon Johnson came into office. And it turns out, Lyndon Johnson had a mistress who was a Mossad agent, a female, or at least being run by Mossad. And there was also some evidence that even Johnson and his family, and his mother's side of the family, were Jewish, which would make him Jewish under Jewish law. So what you had was, under Lyndon Baines Johnson, once he was in place, the arms weapons spigot was turned on, and Israel got flooded with it. I'm not sure in releasing these documents, Trump realized it would be so potentially damaging to Israel, but it is. But that's why the media, you got hacks like this Ben Shapiro, nothing to see here, move along, this is unimportant.
That's important, because actually my perception this week was exactly, well, nothing to see here, let's move along. It's just old, new. I don't even see that how that could be a huge leak, or it just looked to me a lot like, yeah, we are conducting some interesting propaganda by releasing some of the documents, perhaps not everything. But now that you point this out, this is interesting stuff. There,
Yeah.
it's not a nothing to look here.
Yeah,
I,
there's
you know,
a lot to see. A lot to see.
yeah, I was about to move on this subject, but now I have to read all the 200 pages of 2,000 pages of documents or something like that. Oh dear, interesting stuff going on there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm particularly interested in the Brazilian part of the document. I fully understand that you didn't got the attention on that one. That is kind of important because we are in the middle of a narrative war, of a cognitive war, and this can be interesting, important to Brazil for us to analyze further. I'll take a better look on that. I was about to move on, but you just
Yeah.
brought me back.
Take a look.
Darn.
There's a lot more there.
Yeah. Okay. So, do you think we have? Because I think I kind of exhausted my things on this subject. Do you think there is anything else very important to mention about the document leaks?
No. I think you mean about the JFK docs? No.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
those are the highlights. Just basically establishing the fact that James Jesus Angleton had been lying, both about his relationship with Mossad and his relationship with Lee Harvey Oswald.
I'll have to read everything now. Not a great reader. Larry, let's talk about Witkoff, the wolf, or
Yeah.
is it the red cow?
Yeah,
What is it
Stephen
about the
Witkoff.
dude?
Yeah, look, Witkoff is, he is, I'll call him a sincere Zionist, and but he is, whatever hopes I held out that he would be sort of an honest broker and a good negotiator, he's not. He is completely in the pocket of the Zionists and Bibi Netanyahu. And as such, is not going to be able to negotiate any deal that would be acceptable to Hamas. He shares the Zionist viewpoint that Hamas is an evil entity and must be destroyed. Well, it's a contrast with when Witkoff was talking with Tucker Carlson about his dealings with the Russians and the need to have communications with both sides. He'll talk to the Ukrainians, he'll talk to the Russians. And in doing so, to become seen as a neutral observer that could interact with them both. That's not the case with Israel. He admitted early on in the interview that he hasn't had any contact, hasn't spoken directly to anybody in Hamas, hasn't met with them. He's going through the Qataris, the government of Qatar. Let them deal with those nasty, dirty Palestinians. He's keeping his hands clean because he's with the Zionists. That's essentially, I'm oversimplifying to a degree, but that's how the dynamic is played out.
Yeah, I was watching the Tucker Carlson interview, and I was making some notes because I wanted to, analyze on that and ask you things. But then I watched your video that you posted yesterday or the day before yesterday on countercurrents, and all the questions I had were answered there. But I really what called my attention was the language he was using about Hamas, especially. The language he was using. He was basically portraying Hamas as ISIS.
Yeah. And note, while he's sort of portraying Hamas as ISIS, Al-Qaeda, this terrible terrorist organization, he's making excuses for al-Jawlani, who actually is ISIS. I mean, he was part of Al-Qaeda, part of ISIS, part of al-Nusra, and the head of a Hayat Tahrir. He is legitimate Islamic extremist terrorist. And Witkoff's making excuses. We all make mistakes in our youth, and he's come to see the light of day. He used to be named Saul. Now he's Paul. He had a conversion on the road to Damascus. I mean, what?
It was a crazy night. I was high. Sorry.
What bullshit. I mean, but that when he said that, I went, okay, this guy is not an honest broker at all. To make excuses, because here are the actual number, not for the number of people that Hamas has killed. Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and the 13 other different Palestinian groups. The Israeli every attack that's taken place. I looked at the data starting from August of 2000, and I took it all the way. I stopped on the end of April of 2024. I mean, they've continued, but I just used that period. 25-year period. The Palestinians, not all of them combined, killed something like a total of 1,525 Israelis over a 24-year period. Hell, Al-Qaeda killed that many.
Just last week, bombing, there was about 700 victims.
In one day. In one day.
Exactly.
So that's over that period of time. And then when you add in the number that reportedly were killed, and they weren't all killed by Hamas and the Palestinian groups on October 7th, but let's just say that they were, that's another 1,200. So that's 2,755 over 24 years. Cut me a break. Whereas Israel slaughtered over 60,000, at a minimum 60,000. Numbers
just last year.
Yeah, well, up through Sunday, over 60,000. And that's since the year 2000 as well. But the 90% of the fatalities among the Palestinians have come since October 7th. Is that proportional? How many Palestinians have to die to compensate Israel for the death of 2,600 people? Right now they're saying it's 15 times, 20 times. I mean, it's evil. It's wrong. But that's what I continue to try to highlight. That Zionist extremism is what's leading to this excuse for murder. If not to get too religious here, but if you step back and look at the it is the supreme being, the God that is presented as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of Israel, is a bloodthirsty son of a bitch. Telling them, go slaughter all these people, men, women, and children, animals, kill them all. Even in the Garden of Eden, here's Seth or Cain. Cain brings his gift to God. It's vegetables. He's a vegetarian. Vegetables and fruits. God rejects it. I don't eat broccoli. No Brussels sprouts for me. No. Jacob brings the dead animals, the slaughtered animals. And this God goes, yeah, baby, that's what I want. Red meat. Bring it to me rare. Sorry. That could be a great comedy skit, but it's the foundation for your religious belief that the God you worship wants to kill. This God requires killing, lots of killing. I don't want to follow up. I don't want to
start from
my life or my beliefs centered around a bloodthirsty bastard like that. Sorry. That cuts against the grain of humanity. If you really believe all men and women are created in the image of God, that doesn't mean that one group got the special. Well, actually, God had A image, B image, and C image. A is really for the high class. You get to get inside the ropes. You get to go to the VIP room. But all you C people, man, you got to wait out on line. That's what we've got with this ridiculous Zionist premise that, oh, God gave this land to us and nobody else can live there but us. And if you live there, we get to kill you. But it's what God says. Sorry. That
My
story,
bad.
you guys made that story up 2,500 years ago when you'd been captured by the Babylonians. That's why you're pissed at the Iranians. Their descendants took you into captivity 2,500 years ago. And, if it's been handed down generation to generation, you're still pissed at them.
Just move on. Just move on. Jesus Christ. Yeah, sorry. I'm not sure it was the moment to say this, to claim for Jesus.
At least you can make the claim that, Jesus Christ came to, Jesus the Messiah, because that's what Christ stands for, to a radical reinterpretation of Judaism away from all the blood sacrifice. To say, okay, I'm the only, you don't have to die. You don't have to go kill other animals. I died for you. So it stops that chain of violence. And then Jesus is talking about turning the other cheek, not kill the motherfuckers. Quite a whole different, it is a different outlook. I mean, candidly, and I'm not here to proselytize, but I'm just saying from a standpoint of a religion that in theory should be about peace, that is Christianity. Now, we can go through the historical record and, people point out that, hey, the Christians have been involved with massacres around the world and killing off indigenous tribes. Yes. And they have certainly not followed with what they claim to believe to make that case. But, this religious theology has turned out to be a noxious curse on Israel and the surrounding countries, because it's being used to justify all sorts of genocidal behavior.
And perhaps that's why they reject Jesus.
Could be.
Doesn't fit. No, doesn't work for me. Peacefully? Yeah, it's funny because we always hear that Islam is the religion of war and all that. I mean, if you look old books, life was a bit different. So we can even the Bible has some violence on it. So
yeah, it is.
But we have to interpret for to 2025.
It is clear that there have been those episodes in Islam, and there are those segments, I call them segments or sects within Islam that certainly believe, just like the Jews do, that the violence can be used against the infidel, against the unbeliever, against the Amalek. And they willingly do so. And in fact, that's why even ISIS was so extreme, because they believed you could kill other Muslims who weren't real Muslims according to their definition, which is another reason that you saw Iran, who is largely a Shia, that they got involved in fighting ISIS, who is largely Sunni, just for that very reason, that the ISIS was keen on attacking and killing the Shia, who are a sizable minority inside Syria. Now, so this, a lot of the even modern day foreign policy issues you can't understand unless you understand the religious roots, why people believe what they do. And listen, I know what I say about the Old Testament, which is basically a combination of the Torah, the Pentateuch, and then you've got the prophets. I'm sure I anger a lot of people. How dare you? You know, I'm insulting God, or you just don't understand. You know, I hear that a lot. Please, I fully understand. I just have decided that I'm not going to accept this book written by a bunch of captive Jews in Babylon as the definitive word of the supreme being who is eternal. Because this was written by men and reflects the frailties and foibles of men. It's a history. And listen, there were some tremendous writings from, the prophets Isaiah and Ezekiel, yes. But let's not, Jeremiah, but let's not convince ourselves that everything that's in that book is somehow was written by God's hand, and therefore, man, God doesn't make mistakes, so this must be true. No, there's a lot of nonsense in there that people use today to justify killing others. You're muted.
Somehow my
Okay,
keyboard stopped working.
You're back. You're back.
Oh, God, don't make mistakes. Don't you guys know what's the animal's name? Platypus?
Yeah, platypus. Yeah,
platypus.
The platypus. Okay. All right. Maybe God was drinking some of that wine that Jesus converted from water. After that 6th glass of wine, platypus, man, that'd be hilarious.
That sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, sorry.
It's perfect. Larry, since we are a little shrink on time today, not shrink, limited. I just want to ask you very quickly about Ukraine. Basically, Russia-US negotiations and Ukraine, just playing whatever they want to.
Well, we're just getting word now. I mean, within the last hour, that apparently Russia and the United States agreed to restarting the grain deal of grain being shipped out from Ukraine, from Russia through the Black Sea. Now, one of the reasons Russia curtailed that is said, hey, you got all these sanctions on our agricultural products and our fertilizer. Lift those, and we'll go back. We'll allow that deal to go forward. Well, apparently that's going to take place now. People say, "Oh, why would the United States make that deal?" Well, for one reason, we have continued to import. We're dependent on Russia for a large portion of the fertilizer we use. So this is good for the United States, and lifting those sanctions on Russia is a step in the right direction. And plus, it doesn't change the face of the war at all with respect to the Black Sea. There's been a lot of propaganda about how Ukraine dominates and control. It's just bullshit. So I think the Trump folks who come out, they'll be giddy to announce that, hoping to take attention away from this Signal app scandal that has erupted, where they allowed this reporter, the Zionist reporter Jeffrey Goldberg, in on a secret chat about attacking Yemen. They do. They look like a bunch of buffoons, and it's not a good look for the Trump administration. So this is his first real fiasco, and I'm afraid it won't be the last.
Yeah, there was some hope, but this grain deal, I mean, Russia kind of always were a bit soft on the Black Sea situation on the grain, especially because of the global South countries.
Right.
And Kursk just fell, and now they are trying Belgorod and getting hammered in Belgorod, and things not looking good for Zelensky at all.
Right. Well, his days are numbered.
Yeah. Sense of time for him are running low.
Yeah.
Iron Maiden.
soap opera
Larry
Days of
Johnson.
Our Lives.
Oh, yeah. I didn't watch that, to be honest.
Neither did I, but that tagline, like times through the hourglass.
Yeah.
You know, that was their advertising. So
You kind of broke for a second, but yeah, I
No.
understand it. That was the advertising for the Days of Our
Yeah.
Lives.
yeah,
All right, Larry, I think we covered mostly everything. Do you think there is any other consideration for the week?
well, there's excuse me, let me turn this off.
Nice music, though.
There's always
Yeah,
always a lot to talk about, but no, I think we're good for today.
Okay, perfect. So everybody remember, I will please, because I am very bad in remembering things. Could you please write me the name of the book that you mentioned today?
Oh yeah, Final Judgment.
Final Judgment, not too hard. I'll write here.
Michael
From
Collins Piper.
Michael Collins Piper.
Yeah, check it out.
I'll put the links and the suggestion for people to read this book. From what I heard, what you said on the judge, it sounds very interesting for me as well.
Yeah, definitely worth reading.
LarryJohnson, my great friend, thank you again. Hope to see you next week. Remember, everybody, that all the links are on the description for Larry's, especially the Sonar 21, where he posts all his interviews and all his fantastic analysis and articles. The links for the IDM are on the description. See you guys. Well, today still. See you next week, my friend.
All right, man. Thanks, Marcelo. Later, man. Bye.
Later. Bye-bye.